Self-awareness is an ability to understand our own cognition, understand our own skills and abilities, and crucially to understand our strengths and our limitations. In the context of the CASPer, you might best think of self-awareness as being aware of one's role and one's remit. In the professional setting, this is hugely important. It is this awareness that will allow you to work safely without endangering patients. A self-awareness prompt could focus on the limitations of your practice, as the one below does. You are a final year medical student. During a busy day on a general medicine ward, a nurse comes up to you and asks you to carry out a procedure that you have not attempted before. He explains that it is vital that it is carried out as soon as possible. Let's look at three potential questions. What would you say to the nurse in this situation? Why might the nurse be asking you to carry out such a procedure? Can you think of a time in your life where you were asked to attempt a task that you were incapable of? As throughout these technique guides, the first question allows us to engage with the situation directly through speaking to another party within it. The second requires that we think about the situation in some more detail. The third question allows us to provide a real-world example of our own self-awareness. Question 2 here requires us to probe the context of the scenario. Here you would need to think about what could be happening on the ward. Perhaps it is busy. Perhaps the doctors are otherwise engaged. You should be able to reflect on possibilities and answer this in a suitably thoughtful and sensible manner. Questions 1 and 3 require more structure and ought to be developed before you sit the CASPer. Question 1 can be read as, how would you broach the lack of ability? And how would you therefore demonstrate self-awareness? Question 3 can be read as, show your self-awareness in a real-world scenario. Let's look at the first question. What would you say to the nurse in this situation? You should begin by checking the request that the nurse is making. Is it indeed out of your ability? Assuming that the request is not possible, then you must calmly and professionally explain this to the nurse. You need to highlight the components of the request that are not compatible with your current ability. In this instance, it is clear that the entire request is not possible. You then need to consider how your ability can be deployed. While you can't undertake the procedure, you can instead offer to speak to someone else and ask them to do it, for example. You would therefore tell the nurse that you are happy to help, but only within the scope of your ability and your current remit. You should maintain professionalism and make it clear that you are aware of your role on the team. Self-awareness is not just about understanding your limitations, but also understanding how you can help, what your strengths are, and what is expected of you. You should check that the nurse is happy with your response. You should check that your definition of your role fits with their understanding of it. You should ensure that the procedure is indeed something that you would not be expected to carry out. Perhaps the nurse has highlighted a gap in your learning. This would show a great self-awareness. Let's look at the third question. Can you think of a time in your life when you were asked to attempt a task that you were incapable of? Introduce the scenario with a clear description that sets the scene for the assessor marking the paper. Explain exactly what was required of you. What was the task? Explain exactly why you felt incapable of performing the task. Was it something that you felt you should have been able to do but couldn't, or was it something that you had no experience of at all? Explain how you conveyed this inability to perform the task. Who did you have to tell, and how did you do this? Reflect on the episode. What did you learn from it? Are you now confidently able to carry out the task?